How one man changed history forever. The world had never seen destruction like this before. World War II changed everything, and at the center of it all was one man, Adolf Hitler. Part 1. Hitler's Rise. Born in 1889 in Austria, Adolf Hitler fought in World War I and witnessed Germany's defeat. Humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was broken, economically and emotionally. Through fiery speeches filled with blame, nationalism, and promises of revival, Hitler climbed the political ladder.
Du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe.
It is difficult to track down one single event that sparked the conflict, for ultimately it was a series of events that conspired together to eventually light the flame of war.
The world's most hated treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, thus starting World War II in 1939.
The whole world is against Hitler and Hitlerism.
In 1933, he became Chancellor of Germany. Once in power, Hitler quickly turned democracy into dictatorship. He rebuilt the German army, defied the Treaty of Versailles, and annexed Austria in 1938. After occupying Hostia, Hitler's eyes turned to the next country, Czechoslovakia, or what is now Czechoslovakia. There was a region on the border of Czechoslovakia called Sudetenland. Of the people who had landed here after the invasion, about 3 million were Germans. Hitler used this point as an excuse, saying that this region should be ours because they are Germans and part of Germany. Here is where our story comes in. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain did not want another war under any circumstances. He thought that if we give Hitler what he is asking for, he will remain calm, and there will be no war. This reason, the Munich Agreement was signed in September 1938.
The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find.
This region, which was the student inland, should be given to Germany, but on the other hand, Hitler promises that there will be no war. Hitler happily takes this piece of Czechoslovakia for himself, but it doesn't take even a year to break the Munich Agreement. In March 1939, Hitler takes his army and wins the remaining Czechoslovakia, and the country is split into two. One is included in German territory, one part of the country, and the other is made a Nazi client state. Once Winston Churchill said that you were given the choice between war and dishonor, you choose this dishonor. And you will have war. Hitler's eyes fell on the next country, which was Poland. To occupy Poland, Hitler cleverly looked at the Soviet Union in 1939. It would seem that Hitler hated the Soviet Union and the Allies. How did he do this? The only reason behind this was to invade Poland. The Soviet Union also wanted a part of Poland. So in this situation, the interests of both countries coincided. On September 1st, 1939, about 1 million German troops started moving towards Poland. They were planning to attack from both the north and the south. The rest were surprised to see this. The UK and France felt that this was now crossing the line. If Hitler continued to occupy one country after another in the same way, then we would also be next. What will happen to the world? We cannot tolerate it because we give Hitler an ultimatum to invade Poland. So here, we will declare war against Germany. Hitler ignores this ultimatum, as a result of which the UK officially declares war against Germany. Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Canada also declare a war against Germany, while UK Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain broadcasts an announcement on radio about Germany.
A state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
But this was the point of time, friends. World War II did not actually start here. This period is called the Phony War. Phony War means that all these countries had declared war on Germany, but none of these countries gave military support. To Poland, and Poland's own army was very old-fashioned. Neither Britain nor France could save them. About 1.3 million people were mobilized by Poland, but it did not take even a week for the German army to defeat them. In September 1939, German troops occupied Poland. Here, friends, it is worth mentioning Hitler's revolutionary warfare strategy, which was called the Cold War. With its help, Hitler successfully invaded many countries. It was a military strategy that focused on speed and stealth. We were able to invade other countries so quickly. We will invade using tanks, others will not get a chance to think. Then our air force will come from above, which was called Luftwaffe, and the invasion will be at lightning speed. The word Luftwaffe means lightning in German. Hitler's focus was to fight small wars, such wars that would end quickly, not even a week. To maintain this bloodshed, German soldiers were also given drugs. You heard right. A drug called Peri-Team was very common, which we know today as crystal meth.
Confidential military communiques reveal the Allies suspected the Nazis were using something to supercharge their troops, but they had no idea what it was.
When the drug is taken, the fatigue you feel goes away. You don't need to sleep at night. Your hunger and thirst decrease. Pain starts to subside and a strange confidence is created within you. Giving such drugs to soldiers has proven to be very advantageous. Although it is very bad for their long-term health, it is very useful for winning the battle. On the other hand, the soldiers will waste their time sleeping, but the German soldiers can complete the work in 2 or 3 days by working day and night. You will see in the story later how successful this military strategy of near ice is. When Germany returned to Poland, Poland was not only invaded by Hitler, but also by the Soviet Union. After the defeat, Poland was partitioned in two. Half of it went to Nazi Germany, and the other half to the Soviets. The Soviets gave their logic that it was part of the Russian Empire, so they abandoned it. But from the Soviet perspective, there was another country that was part of the Russian Empire before 1977. This country was Finland. Stalin was afraid that Germany would invade Finland now, and Stalin did not trust Hitler that much. The biggest problem was that Leningrad, where Stalin lived, was only 50 kilometers away. The Finns were afraid that if Finland was actually annexed by Nazi Germany, they would move very close to Stalin's house. Therefore, it was necessary to wait before Hitler could occupy his own Soviet Union, the Federal Republic of Germany. He tells Finland to give him its territory. Finland refuses, and the Soviets launch military action again. In November 1939, this battle was also a major unbalanced battle. The Soviet Union's army was much larger and their government was also much better in comparison to Finland. But this battle goes on for more than 2 months, and the Soviets do not make much progress. Finally, in March 1940, this battle ends, and a Moscow peace treaty is signed, under which Finland gives 11% of its territory to the Soviet Union. Hitler's eyes were not actually on Finland, but on Norway and Denmark. In 1940, Hitler prepares his plans. How will Norway and Denmark be taken under control? On April 9, 1940, Hitler uses his blood scare strategy to invade Norway and Denmark. This battle does not last long. Both are very small countries. How will they be able to compete with the German army in London? A government in exile is formed in London. Hitler sets up a puppet government in Norway. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain accepts his failure. He could not save so many countries near him from the Nazi invasion, and in May 1940 he resigns from the position of Prime Minister.
And tender to him my resignation, which His Majesty has been pleased to accept. His Majesty has now entrusted to my friend and colleague, Mr. Winston Churchill, the task of forming a new administration on a national basis.
The responsibility of sitting on the chair of the Minister of Finance is now given to the famous Churchill. On the same day, May 10th, Hitler launches an attack against the countries of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. This was a declaration of all-out war. Everyone was worried that Hitler was not going to stop, and the elite forces are standing on the borders of Luxembourg. To save these countries,
That the fate of Holland and Belgium, like that of Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Austria, will be decided by the victory of the British Empire.
Hitler uses his trademark Let's Creek strategy. More than 1,000 fighter-bomber airfields and about 3 million people on the ground were with the German army. For the defense, this battle is called the Battle of France. The German troops were divided into 3 groups to attack the Netherlands, and then go into Belgium and fight with the elite forces. Group C was to go to the Maginot Line and attack. And you ask what Group A planned. Group A actually had the master plan. The attack by Group C on the Maginot Line was just a distraction, so that Group A entering France was a huge forest called the Ordnance Forest, which French military capture 15,140 or Sedan and travel north. The British and French army soldiers, who were actually fighting in Belgium with Group B, are shocked to see such a large force suddenly coming from behind them. These soldiers are surrounded from 3 directions. The only way to escape from the Nazi army is by sea and by going to the port, and from there they plan to escape. What happens in Dunkirk is a historical mode in the story of World War II. It was said that about 400,000 I troops were trapped behind Dunkirk. The Nazi army was advancing very quickly. They had no way to escape. They could only retreat by sea. If they did not do it in time, 400,000 troops would be killed here. It would be a huge shock to Britain and France, and they might even lose their country forever now. This is the end of part 1. If you like this video, comment for part 2 and subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you.